I'll be talking today about leading a department during the pandemic and what that means for education.
Now, I'll preface this by introducing you to my school. This is St Cyri's School in Penarth. We're a reasonably new build, we have fantastic facilities and technology, but we are in an odd position of not being able to use a lot of those fantastic facilities at the moment. And of course, one of the benefits we have, which a lot of schools don't, is that we have a one-to-one iPad program funded by the school so that every student, no matter what their background, has access to a device. So you'll know that we didn't face all of the same challenges as everyone else. Still, there's a lot of similarities in all the things that we're currently having to deal with. My name is David Morgan and I'm the Director of Faculty for Business and ICT here at St Cyri's. I'm a computer scientist, a teacher and a massive nerd. It's been a difficult year for everybody, given lockdown, months of uncertainty, decisions change at the last minute, and now trying to get a school up and running and working as normally as possible given all the changes and requirements we have to meet. So the first advice I've got for you is to prepare yourself for uncertainty. This year, any day could be a 180-degree change in direction.
You could come into work expecting to teach a full day and find out that classes have been sent home and you're teaching most of your day remotely.
It's a strange place to be when no one in the profession really knows what's going on, and we have to maintain the direction of a ship when we're essentially spinning around in a vortex. The only way we can do that is being prepared for the unexpected. More than ever, the well-being of both our students and staff must be our priority. We all need to get through the next few months together, and so being alert and focusing on everyone doing well emotionally is an absolute must. On the balance of things, it's more important that the students are getting back into routines and feeling that there's a space for normality than ever there was before. And we are one of the few places that can provide that sense of normality. Therefore, decisions that we make, even down to the classroom behaviour management, are all being made with this in mind, and that will of course change our priorities. The pace of change is accelerating, decisions are really final,
and even the content of our courses are being reassessed and changed on almost a monthly basis.
As heads of department, we need to keep on top of what's changing and make sure we're properly assessed of the entire situation so that we can inform and help the rest of our teams. Of course, it's also nice for the students to know what's happening and making sure that our teaching reflects the changes. With that in mind, it's probably worth constantly refreshing Kirsty Williams' Twitter feed to check to see if anything has changed this week. One of the things that we really need to do is prioritise the content delivery for the most acceptable medium, because now we're working in a world where there are three kinds of lesson delivery.
There's the classic classroom learning, which we're used to. Then there's remote learning, where all our learners are online and away from us.
And the blended learning option, where we're doing a bit of both. Each of these has their own challenges and require their own planning and preparation. One of the biggest of these is replicating the classroom experience when students are not there with us. Doing things like standardized routines and registers and questioning techniques that change things up a little bit. Make sure that students are listening to you and are paying attention, but are also engaged in the lesson. We need to think a lot about increasing students' accountability for their own learning when they're not there in the classroom with us, because they are so used to us pressuring them to perform.
Working independently, then, is a skill that we need to improve.
We're also having to think a little bit more about assessments, because at any point we could be called upon to provide centre-assessed grades, or at least contribute to those values. So having more data that is more relevant and more realistic is important, and therefore the type of assessment matters. Whereas before we may have done assessments to put the frighteners on students to get them to work a little bit harder, all our assessments should be fair and about assessing their understanding rather than proving a point. As leaders, it should be our responsibility to model how all this should be done. I've done things like set my room up for streaming, so I look more like a Twitch streamer than a teacher, but it helps the students engage and shows staff what could be achieved. It's also about looking at alternatives, so making sure that we have free alternatives to software products that we would expect to have in the classroom. Things like the Adobe suite have free alternatives that are web-based that can be used by anybody on any platform. And speaking of research, that's something we should be trying to do all the time now. Getting actual empirical evidence into our classroom, spending our time looking at studies about how best to deliver blended learning and how best to engage students in the classroom when everything's so disrupted. It's also more important than ever to share best practice when you encounter it, because all of us are trying new things.
It reminds me a bit of being an NQT again, where every day is an exciting and new challenge.
Some things fail and some things don't, but we do need to talk up those things that don't and warn people about things that do. This includes, of course, things that can go above and beyond what we do in a classroom. If we look at the SAMR model as an example, we will get to a point where we're happy delivering the same kind of lessons online or remotely, and then be able to go past that and identify strategies that can only work in a separated, remote environment.
Finally, we need to start asking ourselves the difficult questions, us and our teams.
Are we building things that are meaningful and that are going to be useful for more than just now? There are merits to both, but we need to be cognizant of which we're doing and why. Another question to ask is, if you try to differentiate your course offers, so you offered vocational as well as academic qualifications, or maybe qualifications outside of WJC, is now the right time to be pushing that agenda?
Is it better to have all your courses under the aegis of the Welsh education system?
Finally, are you building robustness in your processes? Are you letting people have the time to experiment and change up what they're doing? And are you allowing students to do things in different ways? Because if ever there was a time to do that, it is now.
As we work through these difficult times, my hope is that we as professionals can support our learners in the best possible ways and give them the best chances, just like we always have.